I never thought 3 tiny stitches could rewrite my entire life. Hey friends, if you're watching this right now, lean in close because what started as the worst week of my life turned into the most beautiful miracle I've ever known. My name is Sarah, and if this story moves you even a little, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these real, raw stories coming. Now, let me take you back to that rainy Tuesday afternoon when I walked out of County General Hospital with nothing but a bandage on my arm and a doctor's casual instruction that changed everything. I had slipped on a wet floor at the cafe where I worked as a barista, cutting my forearm on a broken espresso machine. Nothing dramatic, just deep enough for 3 stitches and a tetanus shot. The doctor, a tired-looking man in his 50s, glanced at my chart and said, "You're on some pain meds, Sarah. Don't drive. Take the bus home. Rest up." I almost laughed. Take the bus? In this city? With my luck. But I was exhausted, broke, and honestly too numb to argue. My car was in the shop anyway after another repair I couldn't afford. So I pulled my hood up against the drizzle and headed to the bus stop outside the hospital, clutching a prescription for antibiotics in my good hand. The bus arrived 20 minutes late, as usual. I climbed aboard, found a seat near the middle, and stared out the foggy window, replaying the same loop in my head that had haunted me for months. 2 years earlier, my husband Mike had passed away from a sudden heart condition at just 32. We had been high school sweethearts, the kind of love that felt written in the stars. After he was gone, I lost myself. I quit my teaching job, the one I had dreamed about since I was a little girl, because every classroom reminded me of the future we had planned with kids we never got to have. Now I was 30, pouring coffee for strangers, barely making rent on a tiny apartment, and wondering why I even bothered waking up most mornings. The bus lurched forward. A few stops later, an elderly woman got on, struggling with 2 heavy grocery bags and a cane. No one moved. The young guys in the back kept scrolling on their phones. Something in me snapped. That old instinct from my teaching days, the part of me that always tried to help. I stood up, ignoring the pull of the stitches, and offered her my seat. "Here, ma'am, please." She looked at me with the kindest eyes I've ever seen. Her name was Eleanor. She must have been in her late 70s, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and a purple scarf that looked hand-knitted. As the bus rumbled through the city streets, she thanked me and started talking. At first, it was just small talk about the rain and how the city had changed. But then she asked about my bandage. I told her the silly story of my fall, trying to make light of it. She listened like no one had listened to me in years. "You know, dear," she said softly, "sometimes the smallest injuries lead us exactly where we're meant to go." She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather journal. "I was a teacher too, once upon a time. 3rd grade for 40 years. Lost my husband young, just like you." My heart stopped. How did she know? I hadn't mentioned Mike. She smiled gently. "Your eyes, sweetheart. They have that same quiet storm I used to see in the mirror." For the next 40 minutes, as the bus wound through neighborhoods I rarely visited, Eleanor shared her life. She told me about the year after her husband died when she almost gave up. How she started a small after-school program in her living room for kids who didn't have anyone waiting for them at home. How that little program grew into a community center that was still running today. "I thought my life was over," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But it was just beginning. The pain carved space for something bigger. Tears were streaming down my face by then. I hadn't cried in front of anyone since Mike's funeral. The other passengers pretended not to notice, but Eleanor took my hand, the one without stitches, and held it. "Whatever you're carrying, Sarah, don't let it bury you. Plant it instead." Before I could respond, the bus reached her stop. She stood slowly, gave me the journal, and said, "Fill these pages with the life you're still meant to live. And take the long way home sometimes. You never know who you'll meet." I watched her step off into the rain, leaning on her cane but standing tall. The bus pulled away, and I opened the journal. Inside the front cover was a note written in careful handwriting, "For the next teacher who needs reminding that one life can light up hundreds." Clipped to the page was a small business card for the community center she had mentioned, Hope's Haven. That night, back in my quiet apartment, I couldn't sleep. The stitches throbbed, but my heart was racing with something I hadn't felt in years: possibility. The next morning, instead of calling in sick to the cafe, I took another bus, the long way, to Hope's Haven. The center was in an old school building that had seen better days, but the moment I walked in, children's laughter echoed down the halls. I asked for Eleanor. The director, a warm woman named Rosa, told me Eleanor had passed away peacefully 2 weeks earlier. My knees almost gave out. The woman on the bus, she had known. She had chosen that moment, that seat, that conversation, to pass on her legacy. Rosa explained that Eleanor had been coming to the center every week until the very end, looking for the right person to help with their after-school literacy program. They were short-staffed, underfunded, and losing hope themselves. I started volunteering the very next day. 3 Stitches became my daily reminder as I helped kids with reading, listened to their stories, and slowly began teaching again. One little boy named Jamal reminded me so much of the child Mike and I had dreamed about. He struggled with words but lit up when we read stories about superheroes. His single mom worked 2 jobs, just like I had been doing. Week after week, I poured everything I had into that program. The pain of my loss didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became fuel. Challenges came, of course. There were days when doubt crept back in. Funding was cut. A storm damaged part of the building. Some kids stopped showing up because life at home was too heavy. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered Eleanor's words and that worn journal I now wrote in every night. I started sharing my story online, small videos at first, about grief and second chances. The community rallied. Donations came in. A local news station featured Hope's Haven, and suddenly we had new books, volunteers, and even a music program. 6 months later, I was offered the full-time position of program director. I said yes. For the first time since losing Mike, I felt like I was living again, not just surviving. The kids called me Miss Sarah, and their progress, their smiles, their growing confidence, those became my greatest joys. Jamal, who could barely read when I met him, stood up at our end-of-year celebration and read an entire story he had written about his hero, me. Looking back now, that rainy bus ride wasn't random. Those 3 stitches weren't just an inconvenience. They slowed me down enough to take the path I was meant to walk. The doctor who told me to take the bus will never know how his simple instruction saved my life in every way that matters. Eleanor, my guardian angel in a purple scarf, taught me that our deepest wounds often become the places where light enters. If you're out there watching this, feeling stuck, grieving, or wondering if your small struggles matter, they do. Sometimes the universe speaks through a doctor's advice, a stranger on a bus, or 3 little stitches. Don't ignore the detours. Don't silence the quiet voices urging you towards something new. Your pain has a purpose. Your story isn't over. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. If Sarah's story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Turn on notifications. Next week I'm sharing how you can start your own small act of kindness that might change everything. Remember, the bus is always coming. Sometimes you just have to get on. What detour changed your life? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, keep planting your pain, friends. Beautiful things are growing.